I've been on Wegovy, which is one of the GLP-1 medications, since about March 1st. And so far I've lost 27 pounds. And I have to say with very little effort. So I'm definitely a big fan. But here's the thing. I think if you asked me a year ago if I would ever take one of these weight loss medications, I would have almost definitely said no way. I'm just not into taking medicine. It's not that I wouldn't if I had to, but I try to avoid it at all costs. I'm just not into it. And as far as weight loss medications, I would say in particular, I was not open to that. I was around during the 1990s when fen was supposed to be the big miracle weight loss drug. And as it turned out, it wasn't. It actually caused some, serious health risks. I think it was like potential damage to heart valves and, significant increases of heart attacks. It was pretty bad. They took it off the market. But it took me a while to sort of come around, on Wegovy or one of the GLP-1s. But I finally did. I finally, got used to the idea. And there were a few triggers that made me kind of take the plunge. You got to understand a little about my background. Ever since I was a teenager, I struggled with my weight. From the time I was in high school. And I tried my best to keep it managed. And as time went on, it just got harder and harder. I've been on every diet in the world. I was on the Atkins. I think I did the Zone diet. I counted calories. I counted, grams of carbs. For a while, I did the Jenny Craig diet, where you go to the center and you meet with your counselor, and you walk out with a bag of food. I remember I think I hit my initial milestone. I think I lost 50 pounds, and my counselor gave me this big bouquet of flowers. When I was in her office, and I walked out into the waiting room, and all the ladies clapped. And I think the craziest one I did was I think it was in the late 1970s. There was this one called the banana, egg, and hot dog diet, which was, the first day you eat 7 bananas, nothing else. Second day you eat 7 eggs, nothing else. And the third day you eat 7 hot dogs, nothing else. And I think I was on the hot dog day, and I was so sick, I thought I was gonna die. And you were supposed to be able to lose 10 or 15 pounds in 3 days. In retrospect, it seemed crazy that I even tried that. But the point is, over the decades, my entire adult life, I've, gone on all these diets, and I've been successful in losing significant amounts of weight. I would lose, somewhere between 60 and 70 pounds every time I really focused on it. But the problem was, when I was on one of these diets, it was at least half a year and sometimes longer. And that's all I focused on. I had to be so intense about it, and I was really strict. And eventually, I would lose all the weight, but by then I was just like, oh, thank God I'm done. And sometimes the weight gain came back really fast. Sometimes it was gradual, but it always came back. So, as far as getting back to the Wegovy thing, things started to turn around. It was toward the beginning of this year. I was, I think I would weigh 268, which is a lot for me. And I knew I had to do something. And I was like, all right, I guess I better start again with, my weight loss regimen and just really focus and buckle down and, lose, I think 80 pounds, 86, I think I came to 86 pounds to get to my absolute goal weight of 182. And every time I thought about it, I was like, oh man, I just can't start this now. It's just too much, that whole thing of every day, all my focus is on it. And at the same time, I started hearing of family members and friends on the GLP-1s and having some real success. So they were, and some of them were like, it's really not that bad. And they were talking it up a little bit. And I was starting to soften on the idea, and at one point, I don't know if it was probably around, February timeframe, I talked to my wife. And now my wife is not into, homeopathic medicines or even just taking medicine for medicine's sake anyway. She's kind of like me, a little bit averse to that. And I said, I'm kind of thinking about maybe taking one of these GLP-1s, seeing my doctor and seeing if he'll prescribe it. And And she said, I really think you should. And I was surprised to hear her say that. And I was like, really? I said, well, why? And she said, well, I see how you move. Like when you get up in the morning or you get off the couch, it's like you just move like an elderly person, like you're in pain, just really, struggling, really, everything's really tight. And you just move slowly. And it kind of hit me. And I was like, she's right. Like that's one of the big downsides of carrying like extra 80 pounds. So anyway, I saw my doctor and he said, it's definitely something, we can do. And, I took the plunge. As I said before, so far so good. It's working for me. And here's why I think it is. When I first started the program, I went to my doctor, I got the prescription and I got the medicine. And at the time I was just completely overwhelmed at work. And I was like, I really didn't want to get started. I wanted to like put it off a few weeks. But I also felt like I needed to start taking the medicine because it was kind of on a schedule. And if I just kind of blew it off for a few weeks, then I'd have to call the doctor's assistant and get the medicine delayed. And I felt like I didn't want to do anything to potentially jeopardize just being on the program, having insurance cover this, because I think the medicine's kind of expensive. So I was like, I need to just get started taking the medicine on the scheduled day. And then once things settle down, I get my act together, I can actually focus on losing weight. But anyway, that never happened. Like the weeks went by and I was just overwhelmed with work. And I just took the medicine, and didn't cut back on, anything I ate. I wasn't careful about, avoiding fried foods or sweets or anything. I did everything exactly the same, but the medicine started to kick in on its own. So I noticed it probably within the first week or so, just weird stuff was happening. I mean, it definitely curbs your appetite. One example, I remember I was out in a restaurant and I ordered a cheeseburger and fries, something I would always order. And again, I wasn't modifying the foods I eat. It was some of the worst things you can eat. But halfway through my cheeseburger, I was like, I don't want any more. Like I just cut it. So it was like a clean half. And I'm like, I'll take that home. Which I would never have done before. Never, ever taken half my cheeseburger home in a takeout bag. And also even the French fries, I ate a few, but they kind of like, they weren't doing it for me. And on this medicine, on the Wegovy, I've noticed some of like the starchier, like potatoes, just not into them. I still eat sweets. I actually crave sweets on this. But anyway, so certainly the quantity of food that changed enormously. Once I was on the drug, when I was full, I was really full. Like I did not want any more. And the other thing was I noticed, during my day when I'm working, I work from home, I would never miss lunch. Never, ever miss lunch. But when I started on the Wegovy, not too long after, when I was super busy, I would work through the lunch hour, and not even think about it, and it would get to be like, 2, 3 in the afternoon. I'd say to myself like, oh man, I haven't eaten since 9 this morning. It's like I forgot to eat. And I would hear other people say that, oh, I forgot to eat lunch or something. And that never made sense to me. But now it's like, oh, this is how normal people feel. They actually can forget to eat. Same thing with like, even in the afternoon, like when I'm a stress eater, just like most people with weight issues, I would eat every hour or two something, a little reward. It's kind of how I dealt with my stress. When I started on the Wegovy, I noticed I just wasn't doing that. I just didn't even think about food in the afternoon. So, things definitely changed. Again, it's like starting to feel like I get what normal people feel like that don't have an eating disorder. When I used to eat something like, my favorite food is pepperoni pizza. When I would eat pepperoni pizza, I had this like, just voracious, like I wanted to eat the whole thing. It was just like, I just didn't want to stop eating. I remember this was years ago going to my doctor at the time, and we were talking about my weight issues. And he said, just eat till you're satisfied. Don't eat until you're ready to explode. And I said to him, yeah, the problem is I don't feel satisfied until I'm ready to explode. And I wasn't lying. That's really how I felt. But that went away. That feeling like I just want to just devour everything. So, and I think the biggest advantage in terms of long term, being able to manage my weight is that, as I said, I've lost 27 pounds, and I'm not feeling like, oh, I can't wait to get to my goal weight so I can go off this diet. I don't feel like I'm on a diet. Not at all. Like, I feel like I could do this forever. I'm just eating what I want, as much as I want. I'm really not eating healthy foods. Like I said, I've been avoiding the potatoes, and I crave sweets. So that's the one thing I have to just put a little bit of a lid on. Like, I have to stop myself. But for the most part, I still eat a lot of red meat. I know I should definitely start eating more fish, chicken, but so far I haven't. And sometimes I talk to friends who were on one of the GLP-1 medications who went off, who decided it wasn't for them. And they would say things like, yeah, it didn't really work for me. I got to a point, and it was like a couple months in, and I plateaued. It's like one of them said, I eat for emotional reasons. I'm an emotional eater. It's not because I'm hungry. I eat just to satisfy like my stress instinct. And I was like, well, that's everybody with a weight problem. I think what the problem with them was, and I'm not sure, but I think when they started taking the medication, they said, all right, I've got to now I'm on a diet. And they started with the food deprivation, even on the medication, which is a mistake. For me, as I said, I didn't do that because I just didn't want to deal with it at the time. And as it turned out, it just worked out for the best. Before we wrap up, I think it's important that I give you sort of a comprehensive, honest account of what it feels like to be on one of these medications, sort of the physical effects that at least I'm feeling. First, the medicine comes for me and for most people on these GLP-1s in shot form. So I get a box of 4 syringes delivered to the house, once every 4 weeks. And then you take them once a week. I take mine every Saturday. Usually I'll take the dose I'm going to take out of the box maybe a half hour before I'm ready to inject myself. And then you take the cap off. You clean the area, and then you give yourself the shot. It doesn't hurt. Sometimes you feel a little bit of a prick, but it's not like getting a shot at the doctor's office. It doesn't feel like that at all. And you can do it to your thigh, your abdomen, or your arm. I do it on my thigh. It's just I feel like my stomach is like more sensitive, might hurt more. And you do it, and then you're done. You throw away the syringe in a special, you have to dispose of them properly. And that's it. As far as, how it feels, when you're on the medicine, it definitely curbs your appetite. You feel full in a different way than you would normally feel full. Like usually when you feel full, you feel kind of bloated, and maybe like you're almost like, like I had enough, like you almost feel like you're, if you ate more, you feel kind of nauseous. It doesn't feel like that. It's like you literally feel like your stomach is full of food. Like the food is at the very top of your stomach, and there's just no more room. That's how it feels. So, almost like the food is like, almost like trickling up into your esophagus. Like sometimes I feel like, although I've always had heartburn, from very rarely, time to time, now I feel like I have heartburn a little more often, like kind of like the acids bubble up a little more frequently, but it's not any big issue. I also feel a little more tired. And I don't know. I don't think that's a sort of reported known side effect of these medicines. I think some people have said that they feel more tired on them. I feel like I do, but nothing dramatic. Sometimes I wonder if it's just, when you lose weight, it's more calories, going out than coming in. So I would think there would be some fatigue. But again, it's not a big deal. I'm definitely not as regular as I was. I used to go to the bathroom pretty much every day. Now it's once every 2 or 3 days. And, I feel a little like constipated. I could take like a fiber supplement, like Metamucil or something. I haven't yet. I haven't really felt the need to. Yeah, but that's really it, and I have to say, one of the things that helped me be okay with going on one of these medicines was the fact that they've been used to treat diabetes for quite a few years. So I feel like they were time tested. So, again, I was a little scared of the weight loss drugs because of the whole fen-phen thing. But with this one, I feel like, folks have been using it for quite a while. So I didn't feel like, a guinea pig, like, someday they're going to find out that something really horrible is associated with it. So that's all been good. And the upside is I definitely feel better. I mean, I feel lighter. I do feel like I'm starting to move better. Even when I work out, I can work out longer. And I just feel like I'm starting to look better, kind of look like my old self a little bit. I still have a ways to go. I started at 268. I'd like to get down to 182 ideally. So that's a total of 86 pounds. I've lost 27. So I think that means I've got another 59 to go. But the good thing is, it's not like, oh, I lost 27 pounds. I can't wait to be off this diet. I don't feel that way because I haven't been on a diet. I haven't been struggling at all. Like, I haven't been craving food. I eat what I want. I just don't want as much. So that's all been good. I do have a sort of a goal, in my head of like, it'd be nice to lose like another 20 pounds by Christmas. And then the other, whatever it is, 39, 40 pounds, I could lose over the winter, but there's no rush, and I'm not doing anything to like meet that, my milestone goals. I'm not going to do anything differently. I just kind of have in my head like, yeah, if I lose another 20 by Christmas, that'll be a total of 50, without much effort. So anyway, I can't see why I won't get to my goal. Like, I don't feel like I'm not on a diet, so I don't have to go off. So all is good. Anyway, that's it for today. If this video was resonate with you, or you want to hear more of these, or just want to be part of my community, I would love it if you would hit the subscribe button. Or if you just have some feedback or want to share your thoughts, please do drop me a comment. So that's it for today, and we'll see you next time.